Hello, my loves. I just want to take a moment and connect with all of you and let's chat about how bogus the idea of professionalism is and where this idea comes from that you need to be a professional for your advice to have value, or for the truth you share to have value, or for you as a human to have value, right? This way that we grade and sort ourselves. And can we just all name the elephant in the room that when we buy into this idea that we need to be professional, or we need to be credentialed enough, or we need to be, right, it's like its own form of perfection, that we need to have arrived before we have an offering for the world, that we are buying into the inherent classism and stepping on others in the buying in, right? We are participating in the devaluing of people who have not jumped through the hoops and who still have as much worth and as valuable insight. And this idea that we need to look a certain way, we need to speak a certain way, we need to present in a certain fashion, right? It's all absolute garbage. And part of me doing a lot of these videos, basically in my sweats and pajamas in the morning, because sweats are my pajamas, is saying no more of that for me. Because I can only take people as far as I'm willing to go, right? And this is what my children mirror back to me over and over. If I am not willing to show up and challenge the idea of what is valuable, what presentation is valuable, what truth looks like, what connection to divine looks like, then nothing is ever going to change. And we are going to continue to silence people whose ideas and voices we need, right? We all suffer when those people are not sharing their gifts. I'm just putting that out there for all of you, right? When we marginalize and we silence people and we give them hoops to jump through, we all suffer because we are missing out on what they actually have to offer, what they came into this life to share. So, I want to put that out there. I struggle with this myself, right? It took me a lengthy period of time to get to a point where I felt qualified to teach a yoga class. Okay. I've done some yoga teaching stuff on Zoom, but the idea of teaching in a space that is owned by another person, right? That was pretty terrifying. Because I have a lot of error, and so my concerns are not that I can't embody the practices. My concerns are that I will not be able to figure out how to set up the Zoom in the classroom because I'm very tech challenged. I am not going to be able to figure out how to get the music to function or to start and stop. That's just going to get distracting for me. And I'm not going to be able to effectively keep track of time. And those are all illusionary in terms of thinking that I can or need to control anything, right? Because what is becoming abundantly clear, not just in my own meditation, but in terms of having conversations with my daughter and navigating her through her stuff, and having conversations with clients and dear friends, is teaching yoga is not even about the practices. It's just not. um, it's about holding space for people, right? And the practices, like, they matter because we're showing people how to show up for themselves, but what I teach is not as important as who I am and how I'm holding that container in that space. And it's about just showing up and loving every person in that room and holding space for every person in that room to have whatever experience they're going to have and to love them through it so they're feeling safe and held so that they can facilitate their own healing. Because yoga practices, when you practice them the way that they were created, right? Not this colonized version of yoga, but like the sacred practices of yoga, right? It's about integration. It's about using breath to create space. It's about creating space to release trauma and emotions that are trapped. It's about so much more than this watered down version that we often get in the West. And there's a lot of history behind that, that has to do with colonization. And I would encourage you to investigate it more, especially if you are somebody who enjoys yoga, right? Learning about the history and learning about how it was forced to go underground and how it became this watered down version so it could be acceptable, and how the teachings used to be passed down from teacher to student and individualized, and yeah, and all the growth that went with that. And so what has come up recently, right, is that I shared with a friend of mine that I have finally posted that I will be teaching a community class in the studio that I go to in my town. And it's going to be a donations-based class, to support our free pantry and to support our friend's free pantry in a neighboring town, because those are the pantries that the yoga studio is interested in supporting. And initially our plan was just to support our pantry, but then our friends opened a pantry and we would love to support both, because we're all one big community. So when I shared with this friend, she mentioned how, like, she hasn't been able to get over the little stream, like the trickle of fear, like over the trust bridge, to believe that she could teach in a studio, right? It's a big step, like even when you know that this is what you're made for. And she was talking about how her hang up is on bringing notes to class. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but a lot of my teachers bring notes or they bring books to guide them through the kriyas. And to me, like, I always take that as a sign of, oh, well, these people have a lot of air like me. And right, they are bringing something to ground themselves and to keep them so they know where they are, so they don't get lost, right? Because when you have a lot of air in your constitution and you are teaching the practices, but you're also doing the practices, it can be really easy to get swept up away in them. And so having something to keep track. And also, right, like when you're really embodying it, sometimes it can be hard to give the mental body description of why we're doing what we're doing. So just having those materials there. But this friend has a background as a lawyer, so it's like this idea of preparedness and professionalism. And I know because she and I have done coaching work together in terms of peer coaching, that she has like this hang up, and I feel like all of us do, right, self included, about what somebody who's on the spiritual path and somebody who's embodied is supposed to look and function like. And showing that we do not have it all figured out and that we are human, and being vulnerable in spaces is scary, right? And what I shared with her and was enlightening for me is when we show up and we hold ourselves to that standard, right? This professionalism standard, And so when we are holding ourselves to the standard of being really professional around other people, then that is also the standard we're holding them to, right? Like whether we intend to or not, that's the energy that's going out into the space. And so if we are going into a yoga studio to teach a class and we're holding ourselves to a standard that is professional or perfect, or like to uphold whatever our idea is, somebody on the path, then we're also holding our students to that standard, and they're going to feel that there's a right way, and they're going to want to do it the right way. And that is not communicating the importance of showing up in whatever way you need that day, right? What we want to communicate to people in that space is show up where you're at. Wherever you are is perfect. Your job in this moment, in every moment, is to do what feels best in your body and to show up for yourself, right? Show up for yourself above anything else. And in Kundalini especially, we will cue people, like, use all of the props. Concentrate on your breath above all else. So if you cannot do the posture, and if you can't hold the posture, right? Number one, rest when you need to. Use whatever assistive devices you need. If you need a block or a bolster, modify as needed. And if all of that is too hard, then just sit and breathe. And if that is too hard, long, deep breathing, right? And visualize the exercise, and it all counts, because the most important thing is that you showed up on your mat, right? And so as teachers, it's getting to a point where we could also embody that, right? It is not about doing it perfectly. It's not about having the highest consciousness in the room. It is about showing up from our heart space and holding space for other people. And I think that doesn't just apply to yoga teachers. I think that applies to everything. I think that applied when I was a healthcare provider, which went very counterintuitive to how we were trained. We were trained to put up walls. We were trained to boundary. We were trained to believe we were the smartest person in the room, that we had to have all of the answers, and that our medical training was superior to Google. And there was no credit given to people knowing their bodies, or how to listen, or how to do motivational interviewing, where you touch into what is important to somebody and what they actually want and where they're at in the stages of change, right? Like, we didn't learn about how to teach people to ground their nervous systems. We didn't learn to ask about barriers to why they weren't showing up for themselves, right? What we were taught is to prescribe medications and treatments and to not connect with people, which is just such a disservice and an insult to everybody who's seeking our counsel. And so, practicing in that environment and practicing in a way that felt authentic to me, and connecting with people and holding space for people and soul questioning people and helping them figure out what they want and what they need on their own, right? Like, the people I was holding space for, they felt that was worthwhile, right? That was worth their time. That was really helpful. The people I worked for were like, oh, that's cute. Can you not take so much time? Can you stick to the basics? Can you stick to the stuff that is mental body, right? The teaching, the providing the information, the not going deep. And the answer for me is no. Because none of it matters. It doesn't matter what teaching I can provide if somebody has an ungrounded nervous system, if somebody can't show up for themselves. And so this idea of that being professional in that space was the end all be all, that the number of certifications, that where you went to school, that how you dress, how you speak, that all of those things matter so much. That's not ever helped me get anywhere in life, honestly. Like, if I think about it, it's gotten me more work. It's gotten me burned out. It's gotten me to question myself, right? They talk about imposter syndrome. Is it imposter syndrome, or is it just listening to what we're told about ourselves? Right? Is that a us problem, or is that a cultural problem? Is it burnout, or is it exploitive labor practices? Right? Because if you call it burnout, it means there's something deficient about me, that I wasn't doing my self-care. Like, let's have a vice president of employee wellness and let's put that back on people. Like, make sure you're doing your self-care on top of all of the other things we're giving you to do, right? Let's give you some high reliability training that avoiding medical error starts with you. And it's like, well, thank you for providing me this fire extinguisher, but I don't know if you've noticed, but the whole building is on fire. And I don't think this is going to do anything, because I don't care how mindful I am about what I'm doing. If there are consistently no staff to do the work, to do the basics, then your high reliability training is absolute garbage. Like, this is late stage capitalism, my friend. And, you know, we could all buy into it, that it's something we need to fix about ourselves, or we can all redirect our focus to where the problem is, right? Our healthcare system is a dumpster fire. Our educational system, right? We don't want to invest in it. Our teachers are fried. They are not appreciated. It's like every system is a mess. And so, like, this idea that we need to get someplace, have the right kind of certifications, that we need to dress well, that we need to speak well, that we need to be educated enough, have the right kind of degrees, it's all garbage. It's all barriers to keep us from showing up well and from showing up authentically and to connecting with our power, from empowering ourselves, from empowering others. And I just want to tell you, like, we deserve better than this, right? We deserve better than these systems. We deserve to not only earn enough to be able to survive, which is not happening right now. We deserve to thrive and enjoy our lives, because joy is our birthright and we are divine perfection. And the fact that we are being mined for our resources by, you know, a handful of people who have decided their worth is better than everybody else's because they have money and power, right? Like, that's garbage. And I feel sorry for those people, honestly. Like, I can hold them in compassion, because what is your existence life? Like, how empty and hurt are you that you need legit almost all of the money in the world to fill that hole? That you are going to accumulate and hoard wealth while causing suffering, treating your employees like garbage to accumulate this wealth. Like, who does that? Like, how hurt and harmed, like, how did those people sleep at? Like, it's gotta be like such an empty, lonely place, right? And that's not to excuse accountability, but it's right. And that's what we're all supposed to be striving for. Really? Really not sure about that. I mean, I grew up poor, and happiness doesn't come from stuff. Happiness comes from connection to self, connection to other people, connection to source. this idea that we don't have enough, that we aren't enough, that we need to buy things, that we need to accumulate wealth, it's all a lie. And it doesn't serve us. And we can choose differently. And maybe that doesn't happen all at once. And maybe it all feels overwhelming. And so what I can say is that every day we have a choice. All day long we're making choices. And every choice we make, we are deciding whether we are going to act from a place of love or we're going to act from a place of fear. And right, and maybe we're not going to choose love all of the time, but if we can start choosing love more of the time, that's growth and that's progress. And as a collective, right, if we all start doing that, well, then maybe we have more people taking care of each other. And maybe we have more people sharing their gifts because they feel safe to do so, because maybe it just doesn't feel safe right now for them. So how do we as a collective make it feel safe? How do we come together and support each other? And like this is why what I am doing for work is that, right? It is creating the spaces and conditions where people can feel safe to heal, to empower, right? To facilitate their own self-healing, to feel empowered, to show up for themselves and their communities, to show up for their loved ones, right? When we put ourselves in a place where we can prioritize our own self-healing and self-care, then we can show up well, not just in our relationships, not just in our families, but in our communities. And, you know, not everybody needs to put a pantry in. Not everybody needs to be a community organizer. Not everybody's path is to fight abuses of power and speak to injustice, but we all have been tasked with showing up to love our neighbors and to love ourselves, right? Because it starts with learning to love ourselves first. And wherever you're at is perfectly okay. And also, right, I hope that when it gets sticky and it gets uncomfortable, that you can remember that on the other side of that sticky and uncomfortable is growth. And with growth comes freedom and expansion, and it is always worth it if you can get to a place where it feels safe to do so. And if you need people, right, we are all here, right? This is a community. We are going to hold space for each other. We are going to do this together. And we are not going to get caught up in being professional enough to do it. Like we might, but we're going to get back to center and get back to showing up for ourselves and each other. So I love you all. I think you're absolutely amazing. And I'm so grateful for you. I am grateful that you have chosen to walk this path. And I am excited for you to show up in this world in the ways that feel best to you. And so definitely let me know how it's going. And let's all cheer each other on. Okay. I love you.